Can you believe this citrus tree is less than a year old? And the ones behind me are about 5 years old and have not produced fruit. This one already has a ton of lemons on it and it's been less than a year. Here's why. Most people think container gardening is just for herbs or tomatoes or peppers, but today I'm sharing top 10 plants that do better in containers versus in ground. Let's cover it. Number one right now is citrus. So this one has been in the ground for the past 5 years and it has not produced fruit. After doing some research, that some plants like citrus prefer containers, especially if you go to the store and you see some of these plants are sold in pots, right? And they're big, beautiful citrus trees that already have fruit. But the moment you bring it home and you transfer it into your ground, especially a Florida ground, you have to make sure the soil is well draining and it has the right nutrients, and you continue to fertilize it once a month. And if you're not going to do that, you're not going to get the fruit that you want. In the pots, you still have to make sure you're replenishing those nutrients and you're fertilizing it often. But it provides a little bit more grace when they're in the pot because you're not worried about root bounds or any pests or disease that you typically would find when you put them in the ground. So the next one on the list is shampoo ginger. If you haven't heard of it, you should add it. So most people use shampoo ginger for natural shampoos. It grows beautifully in pots. If you put it in the ground, rhizomes can spread and pop up wherever it wants. It does prefer well-draining soil, so a pot is the best place to add it. This next one is blueberries. Oh, I love my blueberries, but they're so picky. If you don't have them in the right type of soil, the Florida soil is not going to cut it for blueberries. I actually see better fruit production when they're in pots versus when they're in the ground. It does take time when they're in the ground to get established, but when they're in pots, you can get fruits sooner. But in the containers, I put pine bark and I mix the container mix to ensure it continue to thrive. I actually see way more production in pots versus in the ground. And you still can get a bucket of fruit. So if you have the option, especially if you're just getting started and you don't have the space, go ahead and keep those blueberries and blackberries in pots and just get two to three to put them next to each other to help with pollination. The next one is peppers. So peppers really love pots. I actually see that because I gave my mom a pepper plant and I have hers in a pot. I have they planted at the exact time in the ground and hers has taken off. I modified my soil, but with hers, she is already constantly picking peppers. Peppers love the heat, so in their pots, they're being contained in that heat, and it's helping produce more peppers for you. And then if it gets too wet, too rainy, pick it up and move it to a different area. Peppers don't really like when it's over soggy because your leaves can turn yellow when it's overwatered. So if you're going to, especially if you're in Florida and you're experiencing tropical storm weathers, that is one that you can move with no problem. So one thing I would never put in the ground personally is carrots because our soil don't really like it, and I honestly don't have the time to really modify it as it needs. So I prefer carrots in pots. So especially if you get the right varieties like Parisian and Nance, who likes is short variety carrots that do very well in pots. You'll never go back. They love it and thrive in it, and I like to put them in my barrels, or I do like recycling bin to put my carrots, and I have not had an issue with them. I don't fight any pests. They love this type of setup. They love this type of setup. So I like carrots, and I personally prefer carrots in pots. So this next one, if you haven't learned the hard way, I'm gonna try to save you this heartache. Put your mint and certain herbs belong in pots. They're not a preference. They belong in pots. If you put them in the ground, if you don't mind them taking over your backyard or mind them taking over your containers, go for it. You want to put your mint, your oregano, and lemon balm in their own little pots. They still grow like crazy, but I can keep them contained and bring them right up in the kitchen when I need them. So those are must-have in pots. So this next plant is my collards. Collards are one of the MVP of the pot collection. These greens are tough, they're reliable, and surprisingly happy in pots. In fact, they do better in pots, my personal opinion. Here's why I think they do better in pots. First off, collards are heavy feeders in the ground. If your soil isn't rich enough, the leaves stay small or they're pale. But in containers, I start with compost. I sprinkle in a little bit of organic fertilizer, and these come out big, dark, and green and tender. Second, so if you woke up and you see holes in your collard, that's a good sign that you have pests around. But when you have them in containers, you have a little bit more control, especially if that area that is currently in the ground has been taken over by pests. When they're in pots, you can definitely just take the leaves off and throw them out, and also just move the pot to another area. So of course that goes for a lot of plants, but you have more control. You can spray them with neem oil soap if needed, and move the pot to a shadier spot, especially when it's hot like now in the summer heat. My collards are still doing well, but they're covered by my grapevine, so it's helping with the shade. And the best part, you don't have to harvest the whole plant. I cut the lower leaves and keep it growing for weeks. One container of collards feed my family multiple meals, and we're not even working hard. Plus, this is one green that my kids actually like to eat. So I love having collards in pots. This one is strawberries. I have been trying strawberries quite a few times in the ground and have not seen success. They will start off and kick off very well in the beginning. If you're starting them from bare roots, you'll start to see the leaves producing right away. The first couple of days, you'll see it flourish and beginning to look beautiful. Then you come back and something's eating at your roots and you can't understand why. If they're in the ground, I have personally struggled with strawberries in the ground. When I switched and moved them into pots, or I have some in containers, I actually have some in a raised bed, they're thriving. They do well, especially if you're not going to put the ground covering on the bottom if you're growing strawberries in the ground. This is another way to, just an easy way. Personally, I saw success in containers. I don't wake up and my strawberries are gone because my squirrels got to them. I'm able to control it a lot more when I have them in pots. I just don't like them in the ground. Try it if you want. Don't say I didn't tell you. The next one is eggplant. The one I have in the ground for some reason is always looking stressed. It always looks like it went through war and came back. I cannot deal with eggplants in the ground, but the ones that are in pots are actually doing very well and they're thriving. So eggplants prefer containers, in my personal opinion, because they're in a 7 to 10 gallon pot. They actually do pretty well. You want to make sure that it's compost rich soil and it's mulch, and they stay warm and get plenty of airflow, and they give you beautiful glossy looking eggplants. So yeah, this last one surprised me. We have tried it in a few places, and this one actually can do well in both places. We have them in pots and we have them in the ground, and this one is figs. So if you're looking to add fruits in your garden space, figs is a go-to. You can control it and keep it dwarfed, because if you haven't seen a fully grown fig tree and you don't have the space, be careful, it is huge. So in the pot you can contain it, and you can also control the soil while they're in the pots. We use a dwarf variety, and they fruit like crazy. So don't worry, you're still going to get a ton of fruit if they're in the right container and you have the right soil. So if you're worried about it being overgrown, or you still want to taste the delicious fruit and not spend so much money buying figs from the store, this is a great one to put in pots. So all right, I think I covered all of it, but if you're still struggling and you have plants in the pots and they're struggling, just make sure you're checking a few things, because you can't just pot it and leave it. That is not the goal. So you want to make sure you are checking for the soil. You have the right soil in the pots. And I like to make sure I use a good mix. A good potting soil mix is great for pots. And you still want to go in and fertilize. You fertilize, especially when it starts producing fruit. You go in and fertilize your plants. If you're watering, especially during the hot heat season like now, you are losing a lot of your nutrients when you're keeping them in the pots. So just make sure you go in and replenish those nutrients with more. So don't just leave your pots and they think they're going to do what it needs to do. And also, some plants can overgrow that pot size. So in that case, you pick up the plant, make sure you do it during a cooler time, like in the morning or late at night, and you can transplant that plant into a bigger pot. Don't be afraid to move your plants when it has outgrown that pot. It's okay. My final tip with pots, just because they're pots doesn't mean you don't need to mulch your pots. Keep them nice, keep the water in, and continue to feed your plants through the mulch. That is my top 3 things I'll make sure you do when putting plants in pots. Just make sure you continue to feed them well, and they'll feed you as well. So drop it in the comments. What are some of the plants that you're growing in your pots? All right, guys, thanks for watching. So until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.